During the course of the encounter with law enforcement in the District of Columbia, he admitted to several officers that he had killed his mother.
A man accused of killing his mother and then hiding her body under her couch and many other items. I have the details in this disturbing case out of Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and where the man was arrested. I'm Angenette Levy, and this is Crime Fix. This case is just absolutely awful. Dolores Ingram is an 82-year-old woman who should still be with us today. Her son, William Ingram, who goes by Billy, is in jail in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, accused of murdering his mother, Dolores Ingram. Billy Ingram was actually taken into custody in Washington, D.C. back on June 16th after police there say he assaulted a police officer. This is another Law and Crime legal alert. Have you experienced severe gastroparesis or other side effects after taking Ozempic or another GLP-1 weight loss medication? The Ozempic lawsuits allege that the drug can lead to severe intestinal blockage and persistent vomiting, and that manufacturers allegedly failed to provide adequate warnings about these risks. True Law, one of our legal sponsors, is helping those injured file a claim through an experienced attorney who helps ensure your claim is thoroughly presented. Visit www.glp1case.com/crimefix to answer less than 10 questions and check your eligibility to file a claim. I spoke with Bucks County District Attorney Jennifer Schorn about the case.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. The circumstances surrounding this horrific murder. Yes, her 49-year-old son, while in Washington, D.C., engages in criminal conduct, assaults a police officer, shatters his patrol vehicle by smashing a skateboard through the patrol officer's window as he was sitting in his vehicle, unprovoked. And essentially then, a little pursuit ensues and a struggle. He then later says to multiple officers, "I killed my mom." And then when being treated at the hospital for injuries he sustained, minor injuries, he said when asked, "Do you have an emergency contact?" "Well, I used to, but I killed her." And with that, Metro DC police were phenomenal in immediately contacting our, my colleagues and Northampton Township police, where then just a simple well-being check, it was apparent that this was a crime scene, this was a homicide, and that Dolores had been murdered by her son.
So let's look a little bit more closely at what Schorn and police say Ingram said while he was in the hospital in Washington, D.C., following his arrest for assaulting that police officer. A probable cause affidavit says that Ingram was asked if he had an emergency contact, and he responded, quote, "There was. I killed her." It continues with quotes from Ingram, which were recorded, according to the affidavit, by a body-worn camera. Ingram said when asked how he hurt his face, quote, "I think my mom hit me and I effing freaked out." If you look at Billy Ingram's face, you can see a big scrape on it. In the hospital, Ingram is quoted as saying, quote, I sold LSD, but you didn't find any of that though, right? You found 6 pounds of weed. There's tons of stuff thrown all over the place. I don't know what the F I threw. There's no way. There's blood. There's this and the other. Just a big mess. Like whose blood is what? So, of course, after hearing all of this, police in Washington, D.C. contact police in Northampton Township, Pennsylvania. They go to Dolores Ingram's condo to check on her.
So when the police were, doing the well-being check, there's limitations to what you can do when it's simply a well-being check, but they immediately noticed blood on the windowsill of an unlocked closed window. So they lifted the window and saw blood, spattered throughout the residence from looking outside in, then immediately forced entry at that point, hoping to, find Dolores alive. They didn't even see her body immediately because, as you mentioned, there was a pile of household belongings, which included a couch flipped over on top. Ultimately, they were able to see a foot protruding, and it was cold to the touch. And then ultimately, after removing the various items off of Dolores's body, it was apparent that she had been murdered and that there was no signs of life.
A closer look at the affidavit reveals what Officer Hearn said he found. Officer Hearn observed a pile of clothes, glass plates, towels/linens, a blue laundry bag, a futon/couch, and miscellaneous household items. Officer Hearn started to pull items off the pile and move the couch. That is when Officer Hearn found the foot of Dolores Ingram sticking out from under the couch. And to read the affidavit, it sounds as if the home was completely trashed.
There was like small appliances. There was, as you mentioned, two lizards lived in an aquarium. They were found dead, and the aquarium shattered on top of her. There was also a fixed blade knife close in proximity, and it was apparent that Dolores had some slashing injuries. And the couch was on top of all of that, which was really quite, unusual, is following the search warrant, when the officers were able to do a more thorough and complete search of the residence after, the approval of the warrant. They found over $50,000 in currency, pounds of marijuana, and extensive quantities of mushroom, psilocybin, which is a hallucinogenic drug. And the defendant made statements to officers in DC and hospital personnel that he was a drug dealer as well. So that was all found in the vicinity of Doris's body, and in addition to all the household items piled on top of her. It's quite horrific crime scene.
Now, after finding all of this, Officer Hearn, of course, called for backup. He also started to interview neighbors who told him that on June 15th, around 1 a.m., she heard loud banging sounds, and that awakened her. The woman said she looked at video from her security camera, and it showed Billy running out of the apartment shirtless. The affidavit says 1 minute later, at 1:43 a.m., it shows Billy walking back up the walkway of the property. Then hours later, at 10:03 a.m., the affidavit says the camera shows Billy leaving the residence with a shirt on and a duffel bag, and that he was walking away from the property. The neighbor told police that she had not seen Billy since. Police then say Ingram drove to Washington, D.C., and that license plate readers, according to the affidavit, captured Dolores Ingram's vehicle traveling through Bucks County over the next 8 minutes or so. Police say Ingram drove to Washington, D.C. in this vehicle. This is a photo of his mother's white Honda Civic. That car is still missing, and the license plate number is a Pennsylvania plate, KTV 2098. The scene inside that apartment, as I mentioned, was gruesome, and the affidavit and DA Schorn offered more details about what police found inside. The affidavit says a subsequent search of the residence revealed a large quantity of blood drops and spatter throughout the entire residence. The blood drops were in every room in the 2-bedroom apartment, including the entrance, foyer, both bedrooms, living room, kitchen, and bathroom. The affidavit also details the large amount of drugs found in the condo. Billy Ingram, according to police, admitted on body camera that he sold drugs, that he was a drug dealer. The blue laundry bag found on top of Dolores Ingram contained 6 vacuum-sealed bags containing marijuana. Each of the bags contained 1 pound of marijuana. A gray cellophane store bag contained $100 bills, and each had $5,000 in it. The total amount of cash police say they found in the house? $53,000. The affidavit contained more details about the items found on top of and near Dolores Ingram. The affidavit says those items include a carpet, a large geode type of rock weighing 60 pounds, and a large glass aquarium that had shattered. The aquarium had housed 2 lizards, one smaller than the other. The lizards were dead. DA Schorn mentioned that earlier, and all of the items were stacked on Dolores Ingram's head and chest. The affidavit says a hunting-style fixed-blade knife was also recovered from the floor in close proximity to the victim's head. The affidavit says Billy Ingram's wallet and ID were found right there. Other items found stacked on top of Dolores Ingram included furniture, dishes, lamps, fans, books, and a television. Can you imagine that? Since Billy Ingram, according to police, admitted to killing his mom, I asked DA Schorn whether he said why he did this.
Did not. And, I'm limited to what I can comment on at this point. Some of the things may be more apparent as to, what perhaps maybe he was influenced by when he committed these crimes. But no, he did not elaborate as to why. But what we do know is that she's very much, this 82-year-old young woman was very much loved by her extended family, and just simply horrific. We know he was living with his mom at her condo where she took her last breath. But this was an awful death. She had head trauma, slashing injuries, and the pathologist opined she might have been even asphyxiated by the things that were piled on top of her. So it's quite horrific.
Sadly, it sounds like Dolores Ingram, had she received proper medical attention, may have been saved, since the pathologist said the couch and other items placed on top of her asphyxiated her. The affidavit says Billy Ingram's bedroom contained marijuana vape cartridges, edibles, 19 glass jars of marijuana, 10 jars of THC sugar resin, and 2-gallon-sized bags of psychedelic mushrooms. In other words, that's a lot of pot and mushrooms. A lot. Dolores Ingram was loved by many people. Her obituary described her as a kind and compassionate mother, grandmother, sister, aunt, and friend. She often attended church and enjoyed quilting, and even neighbors commented about how much they really enjoyed emailing with her and talking with her all of the time. Dolores was active in the community, had been attending St. John Methodist Church in Ivyland, enjoyed sewing, quilting, donating her time, crocheting blankets for hospice patients, volunteering for dog rescues, and going to the senior center.
I have to praise the Northampton Township Police Department. They were immediately in touch with Dolores's next of kin. And, this is a family's worst tragedy, to mourn the loss of a loved one and then know that they face such an unimaginable death, and then know that a family member did it. It's just layers and layers, I imagine, of grief. So our hearts go out to them. But my colleagues and the victim advocates will be working closely with them as we move forward. But credit to Northampton Township Police Department for immediately, working with the family to, explain, the circumstances as much as they were permitted to do so.
It's really awful to think about how Dolores Ingram died. It was so unnecessary. So what comes next now that Billy Ingram is back in Pennsylvania to answer to those charges that he murdered his mother and abused her corpse?
The next steps will be a preliminary hearing where we'll put up evidence to show enough that the elements have been met to hold it over for trial. And then, we'll start the process of prosecuting this case throughout the various stages of the prosecution. So we anticipate a trial within the year. But preliminary hearings typically happen fairly quickly in our jurisdiction. So I anticipate in the next month or two, the preliminary hearing will take place, and we'll make sure to prosecute him for what he did to his mother.
Billy Ingram is in the Bucks County Jail, where he'll be held until the case is resolved. And his mother, Dolores Ingram, she didn't want a funeral or any type of memorial service, so there will not be any type of funeral held for her. And that's it for this episode of Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. Thanks so much for being with me. I'll see you back here next time.